And Argentina is imposing price controls in response to rising prices. It struck a deal with retailers to freeze the prices of over 1,200 items. It says the price caps will last for 3 months, and items include food and household products, the basics really. And if you thought inflation was bad in America, consumer prices are rising almost 50% every year in Argentina. Authorities have increased the number of Argentine pesos in circulation by 500% in the past decade, according to the Federal Reserve. Incredible. Now, an Argentine official says the government's concerned food is taking up a larger part of people's income. So joining us to discuss the problems in Argentina is Fergus Hodgson. He's the director of Econ Americas, is an economic research company specializing on Latin America. Fergus, great pleasure to see you as always. Thanks so much for coming on. I think the thing that caught my eye about this is the price caps are only in place for 90 days. Do you think that the government there are expecting the prices to come down between now and then, or what's the situation?
Oh, thanks for having me on, Paul. And I doubt they'll last only 90 days. They'll almost certainly continue. The fact is, these are part of what are called precios cuidados, or careful prices in Argentina, and they've been around for years, and basically the number is just growing with time. So one report from Reuters said it was 1,200, another said 900, but basically they've just continued to expand. When I lived there in 2016, you'd go to the supermarket and certain items would be marked, these are precios cuidados, or careful prices, and they'd be empty. They'd be out of them. So very quick lesson in economics right there.
That's what I was going to ask. So basically these products, they just don't appear on the shelves. If I'm a producer, right, and I'm producing it below cost, I just stop producing. Is this what happens?
Well, two things happen. One, you create a shortage, right? So where there's excess demand, and then you create a black market. So people will hoard them and then sell them privately at a higher price. And one of the reasons why we can say with almost certainty these price controls will continue on beyond 90 days is what happened last year in 2020 to controls on beef exports. Basically in 2020, the Argentine federal government or central government banned exports of beef, which is insane because it's a huge money earner for the country. And then that has continued in milder forms. But basically the cap has been at 50% of previous levels through this year, and some cuts of beef are still banned entirely from export.
We complain about the rate of inflation here in the States, right? And rightly so. Prices are rising really fast. I believe in Argentina, it's 50% per year. This is an incredibly inflationary environment. I assume wages aren't in any way keeping up with the rising prices, are they?
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. So even the official government statistics, which are notoriously dishonest, have given inflation at 43%. Okay, so it makes the 5.5% of the United States seem trivial. Of course it is not, but in Argentina it's out of control, and there have been rates recorded privately, so private gauges of inflation going around 200%. Right, so
per year, annually.
Annual rates of 200%. So it's not quite hyperinflation, which would be 50% per month, but it's so high that it is destabilizing. One of the reasons why this policy has come in of greatly expanded price controls on many goods was exactly what you're saying, the way that wages have not kept up, and therefore people are paying a higher and higher proportion of their salaries in just household items.
I've seen some incredible graphs as well of the increase in the monetary supply, the money supply. It's been incredible in Argentina, right?
That's the problem, actually. I'm glad you raised it, because all this talk about cracking down on beef producers or supermarket suppliers, it is a complete distraction. That's why they're doing this right before the election, to try to place blame on these producers or suppliers as though they somehow are determining the prices. They're in competitive markets, they respond to demand and supply, and when you generate huge deficit spending and monetary expansion, there's going to be an increase in demand and upward pressure on prices. So it's a huge deflection or scapegoating away from the fact that there is this unsustainable fiscal spending, which has been around Argentina for decades.
Sometimes in these types of environments, I see you could call it a vicious cycle. We have people who are really hurt by the devaluation and the debasement of the currency through social spending or government spending, but in turn they'll call to the government for more help. Hey, we're losing money, we're losing wealth, come and help us. And it creates this vicious cycle where the government print more money, debase the currency further to appease them. Do you see this type of culture among people in Argentina?
Exactly. One of my old macroeconomics professors used to say that although we might think that this government spending is helping workers, in actual fact, it's fleecing them because they're the ones on fixed incomes. They're the ones who are hurt the most when you devalue or dilute the value of their salaries. In terms of populism, what we see in this Peronista or Justicialista party in Argentina is the worst elements of populism. So populism doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Much populism is basically identifying privilege or elite status or preferential treatment to those in power. And people, the masses, saying this is wrong. The popular masses, the wide population say this is wrong, we don't like it. So it's a populist outrage. What we're seeing is basically a pleading to populist concerns or to the concerns of the people and giving them, playing a bread and circus, giving them special treats, which really just distractions from the real problem.
We'll wait and see. Fergus Hodgson, Econ Americas, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.